I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Drapedomaniac podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
Peace, family, and welcome to this edition of the Drapedomaniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is the head Drapedomaniac in charge. And I'm here with my lovely wife, Angela.
Hello.
And we're here to have conversations on how to get off this plantation. Well, last night we watched a couple episodes?
It's a 4-part series, so we watched episode 1 and 2.
Of Exterminate All the Brutes. That is a documentary, a 4-part documentary made by Raoul Peck. And we were hearing a lot of good things about it before seeing it. Hold on, let me just say this before we go on. I didn't hear a lot of good things about it. You brought it to my attention and we watched a clip from Democracy Now! Right.
Okay,
then I stand corrected. When I say we heard a lot of good things about it, just from the source that we heard, because there were 2 women talking about it. It was Amy Goodman, and I can't remember the other woman's name.
Is that the only place you heard about it?
No, actually I heard about it before that. And that's what led me to watch it on Democracy Now! Because I heard, I can't remember whether it was CBS, but there were quite a few people, or not people, but places that I was hearing about because they were making it out to be like this groundbreaking documentary.
So let me add this too, because usually, like for something like I'll hear like my Twitter feed. A lot of times I'll hear stuff on my Twitter feed about stuff. And I have not seen anything on my Twitter feed about it. I haven't. If it has been, I've missed it. So no one that I follow that I'm aware of it hasn't. A lot of times I'll hear several people mentioning it, and I haven't seen it at all. And after we watched it last night, I went and checked Twitter because I'm like, well, what are other people saying about it? And the only black person that I could find that I could identify as black was Joy from. Not CNN, one of those news channels. That she's a dark-skinned black woman from a news channel. But I consider her to
Joy
be,
Reid,
to some extent, kind of white identified. But other than that, it seemed like it was a lot of white people talking about it. And then also it was kind of like, sometimes I would see like a black person here or there. But in that context, then it makes me kind of feel like it's not really popping.
Well, that's what I was about to get to.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, because I'm not on Twitter a lot, but on YouTube I was seeing a lot of things about it, and it's partly because I deal in the like the video and film communities, so they talk about documentaries or what new movies coming out, superhero movies. It's just like a mishmash of stuff, and that's where I heard about it. Plus, I watch a lot of politics.
So, like Cisco and Ebert, white people talking about it, not necessarily the black people.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay. That's what I'm not trying to, I was just trying to understand.
I know, but that's what I'm trying to get to, is that everybody that I was hearing this from was talking about what a groundbreaking, great movie this is, or a series this is. But my rule of thumb is, because it was predominantly a bunch of white people that was saying how great this was. And my rule of thumb is that if white people are saying this is like really great, then there has to be something janky about it. That's what I was trying to work for.
So you thought that even before we watched it, you were thinking something was going to be wrong with it.
I was thinking something was going to be wrong with it, but it still piqued my interest. Because I was like, well, I've been hearing about this documentary and hearing about it. You hadn't heard about it like that.
I hadn't heard about it at all.
Yeah, I've been hearing about this and hearing about it, and I'd be interested in seeing it.
Right.
Because the premise sounds good, and it was made by a black man, and so on. So
right.
how bad can it be? But
I didn't think it was going to be bad. I just saw that one preview. I had high expectations. Raoul Peck did.
I Am Not Your Negro.
Right. And that's kind of, I didn't realize he had done that until I saw the piece on Democracy Now! But I was kind of like, oh, okay. And, you know, from the title and the few images that I saw, I was kind of like, you know, I had kind of like one thing that kind of, had me feeling away, but I don't take it as a strong thing. Right. Like there was like a representation, an actor, a reenactment of like, you know, a Native woman or whatever. And, you know, I guess since I've read a little bit about the whiteification of Native folks, how, you know, it's easy for white people to get in the tribes and, you know, kind of how they've used that as another tool of taking away the land from the people. So, you know, she seemed kind of like on the whiter side to me, and that just kind of made me curious. But I think that was like the only, before I watched it, the only kind of that I had.
Well, before I saw that, or before I saw anybody talking about it, well, I take that back because I was vaguely aware that he had done I Am Not Your Negro, but I didn't think about it again till last night because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that he made that. Right? It was, and I saw I Am Not Your Negro, and I liked it for what it was. But what you were saying to me rang true about it, which was that since the focus was one person, that maybe he was able to do a better job with it.
Yeah, and what we haven't said yet, but you know, before we say that, I just want to say that for me, it was like almost like, oh, okay, he did I'm Not Your Negro. And I don't remember, like, I did see the film, but I don't remember thinking, oh, that was just wonderful, or oh, that was awful. And now that I saw this, if I didn't hate this so much, I would want to go back and watch I Am Not Your Negro to see if I thought it was a whole ass mess too.
I liked or I got something out of I Am Not Your Negro. I don't know if liked is the right term for it, but I got something out of it. It's just like when I watched the documentary about Nina Simone. I felt after watching that, I felt pretty much the same way after watching I Am Not Your Negro.
How was that?
I got something out of it, and I didn't dislike it.
Oh, I got something out of what we watched last night.
Yeah, that's the thing. I got something out of it, but at the same time, I wasn't really vibing with it. The other two, I vibed with it. It wasn't like I thought they were the greatest things ever made, but I didn't dislike them or feel a way about them.
Yeah.
This one I feel a way about, especially that whole thing where it's showing white people being enslaved and black people being the ones who enslaved them and all that. And there's no context whatsoever for that scene.
So just before we kind of get into our complaints or compliments or whatever. So it seemed this, I don't know if you pulled up a summary or not, but it's a 4-part analysis of white supremacy.
Right.
Okay. So, and it's called Exterminate All the Brutes. Apparently it's based on a book, and I could tell this from the Democracy Now! Interview. It's based on a book by a white guy. But when I watched the Democracy Now! Thing, I was kind of like, it almost made me feel like that the white person wanted to make sure that the white man was getting credit for inspiring the title, and that maybe Raoul Peck hadn't given him proper credit or not. That's kind of like the impression that I had before, watching the film from that little interview,
Right. And after watching even the first 2 parts, I'm like, how could anyone think that Raoul Peck wasn't giving due credit to the author of the book?
Yeah, and maybe he wasn't. I'm just saying, maybe that person wasn't thinking that, but when I watched the little clip, that's what I was kind of like, I felt something. And I was like, oh, well, maybe, I think it was a woman, maybe she feel like he ain't give credit where credit was due. I didn't know what to.
Right.
But I did know before watching the movie that it was based on a book by a white man. Or I shouldn't say the movie, by watching the first 2 or 4 parts of the miniseries.
Right. Well, I've been hearing about it, and like I said, most of what I heard about it, not most of it, it was like all of it was just glowing reviews, and this is groundbreaking, and this is a deconstruction of racism in Americans, and so on. And it was all white people saying, and like I said, my rule of thumb, if white people are too pleased with something, then that means that there's something janky about it when it comes to our people, that is not useful or helpful to our people, or revolutionary or progressive for us. And I still have not found that to ever not be the case. So that's, I'm careful with even myself. If white people are like agreeing with me too much, or thinking that what I'm saying is all right, then I need to check what I'm saying.
Do you get a lot of feedback from white people about what you say? No, okay. I was going to say, when would that even happen?
Not anymore. My feedback from white people is that I'm shadow banned and my comments are taken down and so on. So that's my feedback. So that lets me know, I'm talking right. The moment that they stop shadow banning me or letting my comments stand and so on, I'll be like, what I'm saying ain't squat.
It could, right, or it could be that they're not concerned about it, or that they've gone on to other strategies. Yeah,
which to me is kind of that's kind of the same thing. So
I'm not shadow banned. I guess that goes to show you I don't be saying shit.
No, that's not necessarily true, because you haven't put up any new content yet. So So anyway, as far as this documentary goes, we've only seen the first two parts. In no extreme hurry to see the second two. At least I'm not. Yeah,
I pushed after the first part. I was like, "What the hell?" I feel like whenever you put a piece of art together, whether it is a painting or a skirt or a meal or a movie, a play, I feel like, from my perspective, I'm like, well, what is the story that the artist is trying to tell?
Right.
What is this about? What point are they trying to make? What's going on here? And I was so confused. I was like, I thought it was going one way, and then I just was like unsure. There was like one scene in the second part where he's like, who am I? Who am I? And by then I really felt like this is really disjointed and confusing and incoherent. But I'm like, well, maybe I just can't follow it. Maybe I'm not sharp enough to follow it. So I kept that in my mind.
Right.
Okay, who am I? Who am I? This next scene is going to answer that question or continue that thought. And then the next scene was about Ireland and...
Right. That's the thing.
It was like, I don't know what the hell he was trying to say.
I don't know if you've ever seen any of the old, like, sketch comedy shows, like Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, or shows like that.
I've seen a Carol Burnett, like where she does little sketches.
Right. To me, that's what that documentary was like. You'll have sketches that are totally unrelated to each other. They just all happen in the context of one show. But somebody will do a sketch, somebody will sing, somebody will dance, and there's no connective tissue. You know what I mean? There's just a bunch of stuff put together.
Right.
And that will work for something like that. But if you're trying to produce a narrative,
but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was supposed to be like sketches on white supremacy.
That's possible.
But I did not enjoy it.
But the thing is, based upon what the filmmaker was saying, he's trying to present a narrative. So I'm like, well, if you're trying to present a narrative, then it's like you said, it's disjointed.
I didn't know what the hell he was trying to say. I was so confused.
Exactly. And
I was so confused.
Some of the imagery, like I said, that the most stark one for me was when you had all these black enslavers enslaving these white people, and there was absolutely no context to it. I'm like, what are you trying to say?
Right.
What are you trying to show?
Right. Right. Yeah. And, when someone does like a documentary or, there is a script there are words in between the images. There are words that overlay the images, and you select those words in order to tell a story. And some people are more effective at it than others. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't figure out what story he was trying to tell. I couldn't figure out exactly what point he was trying to make. When we first started watching, I was enjoying that there were times when, like, a lot of times I've become more aware of the fact that there will be, if we're watching a documentary on poverty, and they're like, yeah, people who rob from the system mess it up for everyone. And at the time that they say people who rob from the system,
they're showing black people.
Right. Invariably, or most of the time, certain images come up at certain times to underline and support the system of white supremacy, to keep their narrative going. And so with this at the beginning, I kind of felt like it would be like Exterminate All the Brutes, but the imagery would be like all white people. Right. And so at first I was kind of like, well, maybe it's sort of like The Walking Dead, where in the beginning you think the brutes or the dead are the zombies. Right. But then in the end, you start to realize, or I cut out at season 6, but you start to realize, oh, the Walking Dead are the people, not the zombies. Right. So I'm like, maybe Exterminate All the Brutes is like, you know, who are the brutes? Is it an invitation for us to exterminate all the brutes? Is it saying, so at the beginning I was like, the imagery I thought I appreciated at different points where I would notice the words in the imagery. And it seemed to like be telling an anti-white supremacist story. Right. But yeah. And then the other thing,
but it didn't go that way.
It didn't go that way. Like when it first started, I was like, okay, I like that. I don't know if you remember me saying it. Right. But then there were two things that seemed very clear to me. Like during the 2 episodes we watched, it seemed like it would get very coherent and clear when he wanted to talk about, or when he was talking about the person who wrote.
Right, the white guy.
His white friend. This is someone I consider a friend. He's a good friend. I don't know what he said, but I definitely got the message very clearly that this white man was his friend and that he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Right. So that was very clear to me.
White bread.
Since sliced white bread. That was very clear to me. If nothing else was, that was clear to me. And I felt like, and maybe I'm sensitive to it, but when he talked about the Holocaust, I thought that, you know, it seemed like
no ambiguity in that.
It seemed very clear. It seemed coherent. I understood what the filmmaker was trying to say then. Right. You know, some of the images were interesting. Like, you know, when they talked about in the context of the Holocaust, he said that, you know, every Holocaust is the same, or something that was said. Right. But there was some idea of the similarity between seeing a bunch of mass graves or a bunch of people who have been massacred. And then the imagery showed that, and it was all over the world at different times in history. And so that was like, I understood that message. But I was not happy with the product. And I was also not happy. Not that I want to enjoy like, ooh, that was some good, you know, seeing black people massacred and the rise of white supremacy. Ooh, that was good. Right. It's not that kind of good that I'm looking for, but it's like a satisfaction of a job well done. Right. It's like a point well made, a coherent, argument that I can, but that I was like, like as a filmmaker, I was kind of like, what kind of feel like it just made me feel like a disrespect for all of his work. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even familiar with his work other than I've seen I Am Not Your Negro. But I'm like, if this is what he's producing at this point of his career, he's trash. Like that's how I felt. And I don't know him. Maybe it's an anomaly. When we talked about it, you said, you know, we kind of agreed that maybe when you're doing, you know, something like I Am Not Your Negro, it focuses on one person. Right. So even if you're incoherent, there is a thread that ties everything together. Mm-hmm. It's a smaller project than trying to talk about all of white supremacy. Right. Maybe he got beyond it was out of his depth. Uh-huh. It was beyond his capacity to pull together in a coherent way, because sometimes, like with something like that, there is so much to say. Mm-hmm. And that's where, you know, when you see someone who is a master artist, it looks effortless, but it's difficult, like doing that work art is difficult. Doing it well, I think.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, for me, it was disjointed. You couldn't follow it. Even if he was making a point, he wasn't making it in a way that I could understand it or relate to it. When you have someone in a river and they're in the 1700s or 1800s, and then in the background they show a freaking Jeep Cherokee go across the water with people following it in modern clothes.
But
I'm like, what the heck was that? And then you said it was a boat.
I was like, that was not a Jeep. That was a boat. And then we rewound it, and sure enough, it was a Jeep.
Right.
But then I was like, but maybe it's supposed, because then,
I don't know if it was a Jeep Cherokee, but it was.
He picked up the piece of paper that said the president was assassinated out of the river.
Jackson, I think.
So I'm like, well, maybe it was supposed to represent like a Civil War reenactment. Like maybe it was like modern time. But that's the thing. Like we watching the damn thing and we confused about what is going on. And I did not appreciate the reenactments.
And it was right, and that wasn't even supposed to be like a I don't know what that was.
Yeah, and that was kind of like my feeling throughout it. I was kind of like, I don't understand what he's trying to say. I'm not appreciating it. I don't feel like much respect. I was kind of like, this is terrible.
And, Another part where he was clear was when he was talking about Howard Zinn's work. And that's noticeable to me. It's jarring to me when you're talking about these white people's work, and then all of a sudden everything becomes crystal clear, and then when you go back to our struggle, it starts getting fuzzy and.
Right. And even at some point he said so-and-so is not a white savior, but I actually feel like there's like a little bit of a white savior narrative to it because Howard Zinn is a white, I think he's made his transition, but a white person who tried to rewrite history or whatever.
And talked about his wife also. His
wife and her work trying to rewrite Native American, the history of the Native folks. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there was nothing new to see as far as Native Americans and treaties with white people. I already knew that every treaty that was ever made got broken.
Yeah.
And it's just that I watched that and I'm like, I already know that the word of white people is worthless.
Yeah.
Absolutely worthless.
It seemed like, I'm trying to think, it seemed like it might have been something that I got here or there out of it. But I think more than anything, I was frustrated. Right. I don't know if you have anything else to say about it, but I actually feel like it ties into our experience earlier in the day. And maybe that colored my experience of this.
Oh, it could be.
So are you finished with this? 'Cause I wouldn't recommend it. I powered through the second episode just because I'm like, maybe I'm not giving it a chance. Maybe I need to like really, really focus and pay attention and hold on to the threads to see where he loops back and brings everything together. But I don't know. I didn't feel good about it.
Again, it's like watching either this or watching Handmaid's Tale or watching Them, where you're watching something and them I'm not having to really push myself through.
Right.
But like Handmaid's Tale, I'm having to push myself through it.
Well, that's what I wanted to go ahead and talk about.
Yeah, because of I don't like the whole this is a class struggle as opposed to everything. As far as I'm concerned, and from what I see and have seen in my life, everything is about race.
So hold on a second. Handmaid's Tale is on Hulu. It's a series. It's now going into its 4th season. We have watched.
We're at the tail end of the 3rd season.
We're at the tail end of the 3rd season. And it's based on a book by a woman called Margaret Atwood. I read the book, And, I started to feel like there was some overlap with my frustration with, Exterminate All the Brutes and Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale, I also was like, I was like, forget it. I'm not watching another episode. And then you came in yesterday and I was watching it.
Wait, here, let me wrap up Exterminate All the Brutes first, real quick. I can't recommend it, but it's like a soft can't recommend it, because there are a couple things that you can pick out. There's a little bit of information that can be gleaned from it. But if you're watching it and you're thinking it's going to be like this revolutionary thing, it is not. It is not. And the fact, like I said at the very beginning, and I'll say for the final time, if white people are loving it, then you know that there's something janky about it, and that it's really not anything that's telling a complete truth or telling it in a way that's useful. So,
and also I was just going to say, maybe if you watch it, because it's supposed to be, I think the other part of the summary is that it's supposed to be like his personal experience. It's like the story of white supremacy told through his personal experience. Mm-hmm. He's born in Haiti. He's lived all over the world. We saw images of him as a child going to school in Brooklyn, in French speaking Africa somewhere. I can't remember now. He's currently living in France, and we had a little back and forth about that. But if you do watch it and you help a sister out, I mean, maybe you get to the end and you're like, oh, Angela, this is how it ties together. And you just I don't know, but I'm just,
I'm probably going to push my way through the rest of it.
Yeah. Speaking of pushing we had started watching Handmaid's Tale, and we were like we had started season 3, but we were going really, really slow. And then I heard season 4 was coming out. So I was like, forget it. I'm just going to go ahead and watch, Handmaid's Tale so I can watch season 4. And you were like, okay, well, I'll watch it with you. Then we watched episodes, and we were like, I think we might have talked about Handmaid's Tale last week, because to me, I'm kind of like pissed off to begin with, because they're talking about a white Christian takeover of the country, and there's no racial dynamic to this white Christian takeover in America. And that's just like some bull. But we talked about this already. But so that was already annoying. And then now they've made her, when we used to watch Underground, there was a super slave catcher. Was he?
Right. It's the same
guy. He's okay. Super slave catcher. It's like he's like this superhero who can't be caught, who can't be hurt. You can shoot him, you can stab him, you can drown him, but he's gonna rise again, and he's gonna be out here catching these slaves. Right. That's how her character is. She's like impervious. Like now, so my husband told me that. So I was watching it, but I was like half watching it and doing other stuff, just because I don't know. I don't know why I'm doing it. I think that I'm invested in the story, even though it's getting on my nerves. Somehow I'm invested in the story. But my husband said that it is a good show to heckle. So we were heckling it a little bit yesterday.
A little bit. every line that they said,
I had decided that she's like super handmaid, because she's impervious to any punishment, because she has the protection of being the main character. Right. Like that's her superpower, being the main character.
Well, if I could draw a parallel, and we were talking about this yesterday, it's like the Die Hard movies. The first Die Hard, the thing that made it so great was that you felt like John McClane you felt like you could be John McClane.
Is that the main character of Die Hard? John McClane?
Yeah. Oh. Bruce Willis's character.
And okay, Bruce. Because I'm like, I thought I knew that famous white. So Bruce Willis to me is Bruce Willis. Okay.
But you felt like you could be John McClane. You're just a regular person
trying to survive
and do something,
getting lucky.
And you're scared and so on. His feet got cut up. All this. And then as time goes on, as he got to like the 5th Die Hard movie, then he's just like this superhero, who
you can't kill him.
Yeah, you can't kill him. He's everybody's shooting at him and everybody's shooting at him with machine guns, and nobody can hit him, and he has a 6-shooter, and he's just taking each person down while he's sliding down.
He should have a slingshot, baby.
Exactly. And so that's kind of what the Handmaid's Tale turned into, because the first season she had vulnerabilities. She was a problem. I didn't particularly care for her as a character. Like, if I knew her in real life, I probably wouldn't like her.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's okay.
But that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. There's characters that I like in different shows because I don't like them, and they seem like real people. Mm-hmm. But now, as time has gone by, they're showing women with their mouths. They got rings in their mouths, but I call them sewed up. Have their mouths sewed up, eyes poked out, hung. The woman who has power over her got her finger cut off.
Not just women hung, but they be hanging people all over the place.
All over the place. But the woman who's in charge of her got her finger cut off, and she's doing the most. And she doesn't have a scratch. I don't think I even saw her ever stub her toe.
Well, she got her feet beat. You might not have seen that episode.
Oh, I remember that. Oh yeah, she got her feet beat.
And that's not even funny.
I'm laughing at it. I used to do that for pleasure.
No, baby.
No,
don't be beating my feet for pleasure.
That's why I had that safe word.
That's disgusting.
Yes, it is. But I didn't really get my feet beat. Now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, I saw that episode. That's about the worst that has ever happened. I mean, she like been getting raped. So that's not like the worst that happened to her. But I mean, in the context of everybody else.
Yeah, relative to what she does and how she rolls. And then just how she, like, and so when we were talking about it yesterday, I was kind of realizing the source material is a very small story. It's like a diary of one woman. Mm-hmm. And we really don't get a good glimpse of the whole society because her life is so constrained. We just get her limited perspective on her experience. And it's really good for what it is. I think that the author who wrote that book, I think she definitely had issues from my perspective in terms of blackness, but a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. But I got the impression, or I heard or read someplace that she had done quite a bit of research on repressive societies and on enslaved. She had done research, and I think that it showed in the work, and I think it showed in the first season. And now that we're watching it, I feel like there was one scene where they meet up with the two lovers meet up with each other, and they just out in public hugging. And you were like, even in the military, I wouldn't it just seems like their respect for the setting of the story, or their respect for the story, the writers. Right. Now the cinematography is gorgeous, and the choreography is gorgeous. Right. But the story is just like, is this what? Y'all holding hands or touching each other in public? I mean, like, what is going on? Or
even, remember the scene where they were about to be photographed and then they, like, stood close together and held hands?
That's what I just said. They're touching hands in public.
Right. I'm like, and the thing is, these people are looking through, the main guy's like looking through a camera to get it framed up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, he's not
like looking right
at
you. Right.
And you know that he's looking right at you and still doing that. It was out of place. It didn't feel natural. It was stupid.
But at least in that one, when they cut to their hands, it looked almost like his hand was just behind hers. But still, I felt like it was reckless, and it was reckless for no reason.
Reckless for absolutely
no reason. And
it
didn't add any value. And like even the scene where they like meet out in public, I'm like, why couldn't they meet in a closet somewhere?
Right.
Or I don't really know what they're doing, but I feel like they're out of their depth. Their writing is not, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't honor the type of society supposedly that they're supposed to be representing.
Right. And early in when they got to, where were they? They were in Washington. They were in D.C. And early in the time that they got to DC, this woman sees that these women have rings through their mouths, and she's still talking reckless AF.
Right. Well, we didn't know that they had rings, and I was actually...
After she saw that, she was still talking reckless.
Yes. And loud and reckless.
And reckless. And
then that one scene...
I know what you're getting ready to talk at the Lincoln Memorial.
Yeah.
I was like, what the F? And the thing is that she's being reckless like that. And I mentioned to you that scene in Schindler's List when Ammon was asking this Jewish woman, questions, and she just would not answer because she was afraid that anything she said was going to be a wrong answer. She was going to get beat or whatever. And I'm like, when you're living in a situation like that, that's more realistic to me.
Even, we talked about this last night, even as a black person. Like, remember that time we got stopped by the cops?
Right.
And it was like, I'm like, just, okay, stay calm.
Right.
You didn't seem to be, but I'm just saying, you be under stress. You don't know what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. You concerned. You don't know if they gonna give you a ticket. You don't know what could happen.
Beat you, or you gotta end up a chalk outline. But the reason I didn't get all flustered was because in a situation like that, I'm kind of feel like, what else can I do? It's like when I got surrounded by those cops.
You can just do your best.
All I did was put my hands on the steering wheel.
But I'm just saying that what you were going to say about when they first got to Washington, I'm like, the women's mouths are covered, because I noticed it with the Handmaid and some of the readers.
Right.
I was like, their mouths are covered. What does it mean? And then later we found out that their mouths were like metal stapled shut or ringed shut or sewn shut underneath those things. And you were like, why the F does she not? If I thought that there was a chance that somebody was going to ring my mouth up, I would be trying to be quiet.
Right.
Especially when you don't know what's going on. It's like, be quiet first and get the lay of the land, and then decide if you want to take the risk and make the sacrifice. But you don't just come into a situation not knowing what's going on, all loud and...
Especially if she knew she was going back to Gilead. I'm like, dude, have this conversation on the effing plane. Right. You know, why you have to have it here in front of God and everybody at the freaking Lincoln Memorial, this acting like an amphitheater, that's just sending your voice all out there, and then you got a million women sitting out there, the million Handmaid March.
And I was confused because I thought it was just her and the woman. Right. And then
even if it
was, I was shocked at that. But then we turned around and it's like they couldn't hear it, and they acted like they couldn't hear it. Right. It wasn't like, so I don't really
amplified
understand.
And she's talking all reckless like that.
Even if it wasn't amplified, she was loud. Right. And I feel like I'm as loud as I am. I do know that you can be emphatic without being loud.
Right. It was just. The show is messy. It's written messy.
Yeah, it's lazy. It's lazy.
It's the season finale of Greenleaf all over again. It's just all jacked up and stupid. Makes no sense. Oh.
Well, I wonder because they're on a new season of Greenleaf. But there was one time when I was watching.
Show traumatized me.
When I was watching Greenleaf, and I was like, "This is really well done." And then I got to the last episode, and I was like, "What happened?" But I wanted you to see it because I thought the season was really good. But I was trying to warn you. I'm like,
she wanted me to see it because she was mad at me. She said, "I'm gonna get that dog."
No, remember I kept telling you.
Ayapo. Here, watch this, honey.
No, I said it's good, but it falls apart at the last episode. Yeah, and you joked about that forever. You like they brought in the interns to write it, or you were clown. It was a mess. That was a mess. That's how the show is to me.
Yeah, that's how a lot of these shows get and fall apart. The Jordan Peele show. I'm like, everything just like falls apart. Mm-hmm. And even no matter how good it starts out, I call the Jordan Peele show. It's the new Twilight Zone. But I hate to call it that. But that's my stomach. But
But it just reminds me of what I was saying before. I think that it's easy, and we laughing and joking and criticizing people's work. Mm-hmm. But I feel like as someone who tries to create things, when I get on stage as an actor, I'm really trying, and it's easier said than done.
True.
And it's easier to tear something apart than to create something. True. So like when I see something that is really well done, mm-hmm. it's really awesome, because I know that, some people just have some natural little gifts and can throw out a gem here or there. Mm-hmm. But I feel like to craft something and put something together, right, is more than a notion. And to make it look effortless and beautiful and,
That's so true.
Yeah, so...
I will say this, though. There are people who cannot carry a note whatsoever. But bad music when you hear it.
I don't.
Yeah, you do.
I know what I don't like. I know.
There's not liking something. Like me, I don't typically like songs by Patti LaBelle, but the woman can sing her ass off. I just don't care for her music. So there's a difference between not caring for somebody's music mm-hmm. and whether they actually are able to sing or not. Whoever. You got people like Bob Dylan or Mick Jagger. If anyone who comes up to me and tells me either of them can sing is trying to get into a fight. But I like the Stones music, and mm-hmm. I like some of Dylan's music. Mm-hmm. But you'll never catch me saying
that they can sing.
That they can sing.
Just like some people are performers. Some people are really good performers.
Right.
Like for me. Like, I went through, I think, everything on iTunes to try to find a Beyonce song mm-hmm. that I liked for me, and I couldn't. But if you put Beyonce, this is really weird to me, I don't understand it. But I find her to be very charismatic and dynamic. I really enjoy watching her. Mm-hmm. I don't like her music, though.
Right.
That's just me.
Right. There you go.
But I can watch her in video. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, if you were to be like, download the song and like listen to it, I couldn't find anything I wanted to listen to. Is the time up?
Not yet, but it's just giving one more. That's like me and freaking David Byrne. He's the lead singer. Was the lead singer of the Talking Head. He just went solo. But nobody. I'll say me. I would never be accused of calling him a singer, mm-hmm. but I love his music. Mm-hmm. And so I said all that to say there's people who have their own musical stylings and mm-hmm. so on. And then there are people who are just bad singers. Mm-hmm. And that's just the truth of it. And you don't have to be a great singer to know a bad singer when you hear it.
You don't have to be a good writer to know that episode of Greenleaf fell apart.
I read articles all the time online, and I'm like, somebody got paid to write this.
Mm-hmm. Well, they don't be. A lot of times they don't be paying the people. They be half paying them, and right, interns doing stuff.
Right, and it's not just typos. Anybody can get
those. The quality of writing has gone down here recently.
And I read it and I'm like, this, because I don't mind a sentence that's weak, mm-hmm. but then there's some sentences that just don't make any sense mm-hmm. whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I have actually read articles when people, the writer would say, well, all the people who died are dead. Mm-hmm. Is that right? All of them?
Baby, you're so nitpicky. You know what they mean.
All the people who got, that's like saying they got killed to death. I'm like, what? They got killed to death? All right.
Yeah.
So, all the people who died are in the hospital. What are you talking about? Yeah. But anyway.
So I don't know. Maybe I could not appreciate the effort, the artistry of Exterminate All the Brutes, mm-hmm. and here these Handmaid's Tales are, I just don't like her characterization. I feel like she's reckless. Like she just be out here, walking into a group of people who are organizers and who are resistors, and then she telling them what to do and making all of these like decisions. Right. And I'm like, that's not how, just because she's the lead character on the show, like, it's not credible. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't ring true. It looks crazy. It just looked crazy to me. Right. So anyway.
And so I'll just wrap it up by saying, when you look at a show like Exterminate All the Brutes, you look at Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale, when you examine that, there's just this feeling of, well, that couldn't really happen. But the problem is that it has happened.
And it is happening.
And it is happening. Mm-hmm. And anything that has happened can happen. So, here in the United States, they're like, well, that couldn't happen here, or this or that couldn't happen. What are you talking about? It already has happened, and it can happen. It's like you're talking about people who find themselves stateless, and at any moment. I feel like I told you I've been fascinated with this concept of statelessness, because I feel like I am stateless. Right. And I feel like, I remember at one point people were like, well, the 14th, 15th, and 13th, whatever amendments. 13th, 14th, 15th, like if they repeal those, then we're not citizens. I feel like shit, we ain't citizens anyway. Right. Do we get treated as citizens? No. Do we have and I feel like they could, they rules, they laws don't mean, I feel stateless. Right. And if you all you have to do is like look at the different treaties that were made, and it's like these people, their word is worth zip, and so it doesn't matter what's written in the Constitution. It doesn't matter what's written in the Bill of Rights. To them, that's just words on paper. But anyways, that could take us into a whole other discussion. Yeah. But I enjoyed this discussion, as always. And I hope you did, too, who are listening. Oh, I did. I thought you were talking to me. Yeah, I hope you did, too. And I hope you did, too. And so, this is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC. That's the head Draco Maniac in charge. I'm going to go out tonight and get something so I can get my feet beat with it. And my beautiful wife, Angela. What are you gonna get to get your feet beat? I don't know. I know this place. A cat of nine tails. Yeah, I know this place. But anyway, Angela, and we're wishing you peace and blessings, sanity, safety, and security through separation. And until next week at the same time, we will see you on the run. Take good care. And thank you again for listening to the Drapedomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doiamedia.com. DOIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.